I'm done trying to live up to others' expectations. Family, society, class, race, sex, or religions. It's time to break free from the isms that make us feel like we're in prison. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. Tired of the madness, done with the sadness. Gonna break free and be unleashed.
Hello, the Pope is dead. That's a weird beginning. The Pope is dead, and the Catholic Church is choosing its next leader behind locked doors. Conclave is a movie that we're going to dive into this week, and really it could not be more relevant. We're not going to just talk about religion. We're going to talk about secrecy, obedience, and the kinds of leashes that still wrap around our voices and our lives.
That's right. This is about more than just the Vatican. It's about systems that silence, shame, and condition people, especially women and the LGBTQ plus community, to comply. And today we're pulling the veil all the way back.
So you're listening to Unleashed AF, the podcast that rips off the mask, exposes the leash, and challenges you to lead with your full, damn, wholehearted power. I'm Deidre Beecham, Power Voice Activator for women who are done with their nice girl training. I left a religious cult, came out of the closet after 20 years of marriage. And while most people shift their mindset, I rebuilt my entire internal system, brain, body, and soul, to reclaim my power voice. And now I help women just like you to do the same.
And I'm Jenny Badig, a certified hypnotherapist, coach, and human factors engineer, and liberator of your subconscious superpowers.
Used for good
only. Right, that's right. Not for bad usage at all. I help people unleash what's already inside them so they can stop sabotaging and start soaring. Soaring with the eagles. And together, we're here to strip back the BS, call out the leashes, and explore what it really means to be free. I almost feel like that's sort of like the Christmas song. Open the shutters and threw up the sash or whatever.
For what it is to be free. Yeah.
So we're exploring what it means to be free in your body, your voice, and your damn life.
Mm-hmm.
So if you love what we're about, you can hit follow, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments or at unleashedafpodcast.com, which is our website, on the WWJDD page, which is What Would Jenny and Deidre Do? We're here for truth, rebellion, and your authentic, unleashed life.
Awesome. Yes. And this week, Conclave. It turns out it was actually on my list of things to watch, and I didn't realize. But yeah, that was an interesting movie. Jenny had told me, hey, have you watched Conclave yet? I'm like, no. She's, I need to talk to somebody about this movie.
Yes, I was itching. I was going to spontaneously combust, wanting to share the information, like the surprise ending. So disclaimer, if you have not watched it and want to watch it, come back and watch this after you've seen it, because we're going to talk about the whole thing.
Yeah, and especially when you get to the end of the podcast. We'll give you a warning before we blow the lid off the ending. We will give you a warning. So if you do want to listen to a little bit of it, when you get to a point, you're going to want to go away. Yeah. So Conclave was fascinating because it was kind of like a dramatized version of the behind the scenes of what happens inside the conclave, which is just where the cardinals are sanctioned off from the rest of the world, and they vote on the next pope.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, I didn't know that happened that way. I did not know. But there were some really big kind of what the fuck kind of moments for me. Yeah. And I know you had some
absolutely
moments as well.
And I'll say, I was raised Catholic, so I was aware. I didn't know it was called Conclave, actually. I just knew that all the cardinals got together and voted, and then the black smoke comes out if they voted and there wasn't a majority winner or something. But when the white smoke comes out, everybody gets excited because that means they finally picked a new guy.
That's
basically what I knew about it.
So I didn't know that they were sanctioned off from the world. I mean, they were just cut off.
Sequestered.
Sequestered. Yeah. Keep sanctioned. They're sequestered off. Thank you. They're sequestered off from the world. They can't get any news from inside or out. And they actually, it was almost like they were like locked in, right? I mean, they were even the windows.
Yeah.
They had like these steel bars that were coming down over the windows, or
and I believe
even letting light in.
I believe the reasoning for that was probably because they didn't want listening devices to be getting, some of their discussions or what the vote results were or something. I'm assuming that is like a protection from listening ears kind of thing. I'm not positive. I never knew that was part of it. And I'm not sure it's always been a part of it. Because some of that technology seemed a little on the newer side.
Oh, yeah, it definitely did. But even those were kind of interesting things. The things that really surprised me, kind of like those WTF moments, were the stark kind of division between men and women. I mean, it was very, very stark.
Yeah. I mean, the only women really, I think, that were shown in the movie were nuns.
Yes.
So it's not like you can just have women walking around the Vatican.
And they were very, very hard to see. They basically made themselves very, very small. They served quietly, quickly, and always in reverence to all of the men.
Yep.
And the other thing, and that just kind of took me back. I was like, ugh, felt like this crushing kind of feeling. Yeah. And because women are definitely second-class citizens in the Vatican. And the other one that really, really threw me, and I know that this threw you too, because I don't think that either one of us realized just how political it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
even though it's not supposed to be.
Oh, it certainly is.
Part of the whole point, not even just of the papacy, which is the popehood, I guess you could say. There's so many weird words for that. But the idea of even people who become priests, they take a vow of chastity, they take a vow of celibacy. They take all these vows of like giving up all their earthly and worldly like possessions or wants or desires or whatever, just so that they can be in service to God, all this stuff. And so the idea of wanting power is really supposed to be completely outside of what they care about. It should just be God's will, what's meant to be. God will speak to the cardinals and they'll all get the same idea of who to vote for. And that's what it should be. But boy, that is not what they demonstrated in that movie, because there were all kinds of little behind the scenes. And even as I was reading about the current conclave that's about to happen, because Pope Francis just passed away, the conclave itself, meaning when they get sequestered and actually start to do the votes, isn't supposed to start until March 7th, or not March, May 7th. Okay. But I think most of the cardinals who are eligible to vote, and not all of them are eligible, by the way. If you're over the age of 80, you're not eligible to vote. That didn't really come up in the movie, but in my research, I was like, oh, well, that's interesting. Because I would imagine there are cardinals over the age of 80. And I'm pleasantly surprised that the church has figured out.
Yeah, it seems that, the Catholic Church has better rules for their rulers than America does. That's
right. So, and there's a few different things I can think of in terms of why they did that, but I think it's a good thing. And so they're all there now having pre-conclave meetings.
Yeah, now this was fascinating to me because conclave started before the conclave was actually activated. They weren't sequestered away. And that's exactly what was happening. It was kind of like lobbying, right? It felt very much like lobbying in Congress. Like deals being made,
or campaigning.
Yes, campaigning. This is what I stand for. This is what I believe in. And if you vote for me, this is going to be the way it is. And then bad talking somebody else
Mm-hmm.
carefully. I mean, it was very careful bad mouthing,
Mm-hmm.
more innuendo and subtle hints
Yeah.
as to what somebody else might believe
Right.
and what they might share. And that was, oh, wow, that really harkened back to what happens in our own system. I just didn't expect to see it there. I guess if I
Yeah.
had thought about it, I just didn't expect it to be quite so blatant, so
Yeah.
in your face that that's what they were doing, is really jockeying for position with each other.
Yeah. And it is interesting how many parallels there are, even though this movie came out a few years ago and it won several awards, as I recall. So it didn't come out, I don't think, with the intention of saying, oh, this is like we're art imitating life of when Pope Francis dies and they elect a new pope. But the Pope in the movie, I don't even remember what his name was, that had
I
passed,
don't remember.
it did seem as though he was similar to Pope Francis because he was more on the progressive side. You could tell by what some of the cardinals were saying that, oh, this has been kind of a progressive pope. Some of them were saying we need to get back to our traditional values, and that's why you want to choose me, that kind of thing. And there was one of the really interesting things was when someone showed up that wasn't originally on the list of cardinals that they had. And so they were like, well, who is this person who comes here claiming to be a cardinal? And they found out, oh, he was made a cardinal by that previous pope, but they did it sort of undercover or, secretly. They didn't make a big deal about it. So that was interesting. And then also there was a pope that came into question, there was a cardinal that came into question, had the pope before he passed ask this cardinal to step down or resign, which therefore would make him not eligible to vote in the conclave. But nobody else would admit to hearing such a thing.
Well, the only person that was in that meeting with them who witnessed it was outside of the sequestering.
Right.
So they
He
were
was
outside.
not a cardinal.
They would
Right.
not question him.
Yeah.
And it was just really fascinating that the rules and kind of the mystique and the men jockeying for power. I was like, wow, I thought it was something. I'm sure it was originally envisioned differently. And some of them really held to it. The guy Lawrence, he was very much like, I don't want it. And this should really go to somebody who doesn't want it, because you don't want the person that wants power in this position. And I thought, yes,
Right.
that should be that way with the presidency too. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't want the person who wants all the power and who wants to
Yes.
be Mr. Powerful, like what we have right now, because look at the danger of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even broader than the presidency, I think all of the federal government and even state and local government, the idea originally was that they were supposed to be civil servants.
Right.
They work for us, so to speak. And that's not what it's turned into. So it was never
something very
supposed
different
to be about power in terms of how it was written anyway. But I will say, when you watch, things like Hamilton, which kind of informs a lot of, it's not a historically accurate representation of how our country was founded, but there's a lot of interesting things that come out in that play that when you look at it now, you go, huh, they were kind of trying to have, work it out so that the federal government would be in control more than the state. Like they were putting some wheels in motion to centralize power and do certain things that now we're like, wait, that's not how it's supposed to be. Well, they might have had a few kind of questionable ideas when they were writing the laws to begin with. But yeah, the idea is you're supposed to be a servant of the people and doing what they, representing their interests and all that stuff. And that was not what was going on initially in those discussions before and in the early part of the conclave.
Yeah, it was absolutely fascinating. And you can also see you can also see there's so much that is happening in our world right now, right? That kind of lines up with some of the things that we saw in Conclave, as far as the churches, at least what we're hearing about, the church's desire to have women not voting, that men vote, that men take care of everything, that women just stay at home. It feels very much that what we watched in Conclave is kind of what this current governmental regime wants it to be like outside of Vatican City.
Right.
The separation of men being in charge of everything, women not, and just being servants.
Right.
Seen as little as possible and heard never.
Right.
Women can give their opinion, but us men, we're gonna make the final decision. Doesn't matter what you say. We'll listen to you, appreciate your thoughts.
Sort of.
But shut up.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. I don't know how much comes from church. It would be an interesting study to see how much of society has been moved or changed or subject to religion. And that's why our country is the way it is, or is it going the other way? And I think it's both. But it's really interesting. It was interesting to see that and how it does tie in. Like what was her name? Elizabeth Mussolini?
Isabella Rossellini.
Rossellini. Not
Yeah.
Mussolini. Rossellini.
Close.
Not Mussolini.
No.
Rossellini. She's a fabulous actress. Here's this amazing actress who had 2 lines in the film?
Practically, yeah. Well, 2 different times that she spoke, basically.
Yeah, and I think she was the only woman that spoke in the whole thing. Right? Did any other women speak?
And Black Nun.
Oh, that's right. That's right. For a very limited period of time. So, I mean, here's this amazing actress, and she has 2 lines. And she was in a lot of the scenes because, again, there were nuns serving the cardinals. But really, really fascinating. And I used to be a part of that kind of separation, of men always being right and always being the leaders and the women being subservient to it. This was when I was in the cult. And it's really crazy how much that messes with your psyche as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and I remember as a kid, when I was in the Catholic Church, one of the things that my mom was even kind of pushing for, she felt like it was unfair and, they need to change this. I don't know that she did anything all that active about it, but I do remember she felt like, well, that's not fair. And it was that altar for the servers that would go up and be next to the priests in Mass, during Mass, and carry the candles or carry the cross or whatever they had to do. It could only be boys. And she was like, why can't it be girls? And that was something that did actually get changed. I mean, certainly they haven't gotten to the point of allowing female priests, but they have allowed female altar girls now, or servers.
Really?
And that changed back with Pope John Paul II in the early 90s.
Okay.
Yeah. So
I'm glad you clarified, because I don't know when any of the popes were. So I appreciate that you clarified. Thank you.
Yeah. And I don't recall when he passed away, but that was actually the last time that there was a conclave of a pope that had died. So that was 20 years ago. And the more recent conclave before this one was Pope Benedict, who had resigned. So he was still around, but had stepped down, didn't want to be pope anymore. I can't remember if he had some health issues or just he was like, I'm not doing a good job here. Let somebody else do it. I'm done. But because he wasn't a very popular one. Pope Francis was definitely way more popular than Pope Benedict, even though in some parts, he was much more progressive. So the more progressive parts of Catholics really appreciated him. The more conservative Catholics thought he was
not so much.
Yeah, a heretic. But
so in this now, this is a good time if you are planning on watching this movie. This is a good time to turn this off and go away. We love you. Come back another day.
Right, come back and watch the movie. It's
right,
on Prime, and it's like one of the top trending movies being watched right now, I think, because it's actually kind of happening or about to happen.
Right. So there was one gentleman, the one that you had already mentioned, that showed up and nobody knew that he was even a cardinal. They did verify that he was a cardinal, so everything was fine.
And the reason they kind of excused it, or kind of was like, okay, we understand why it was a secret, is because he was in Kabul.
Yeah.
And of course, not a huge Catholic population in Kabul. And probably not a real popular thing to be is a Catholic in Kabul. So they're like, oh, that must be why the Pope, didn't make a big deal about it, or didn't make it very public, because they wanted, for his own safety, they didn't blow his cover, so to speak.
It says, so I just looked it up real quick. It's dangerous to be Catholic or openly practice any non-Islamic faith in Kabul, which is in Afghanistan, because there is religious extremism, a lack of religious freedom, surveillance, and punishment. And the Catholic infrastructure or presence in Afghanistan mostly centered around the Italian embassy. But yeah, so it's very, very difficult. There's no safe asylum. There's no legal or governmental mechanisms for Catholics to seek protection or appeal persecution in Afghanistan. So very, very, very dangerous. So his identity being kept a secret.
Right. But we find out later that probably wasn't, at least what wasn't the only reason.
It wasn't the only reason. Yeah.
It was kept secret.
Yeah, and so it was really interesting, when he first got there, and he was very sweet and kind, and I think we were all surprised. Like the very first vote, he got a vote.
Yeah,
it was like, who voted for this man?
Yeah,
how did that happen?
Yeah,
and then with each vote, he had, just a few more votes, but he was just such a.
And I'll also say, because they get there prior to the conclave starting, so he was there a few days before, probably.
He was.
He came in, and the guy that was sort of in charge of the conclave,
Lawrence.
He introduced him to everyone as they were getting ready to sit down to a meal, and they said, "Oh, well, why don't you go ahead and do the blessing for the meal?"
Right.
And so that's how people actually kind of knew who he was.
That's how they got introduced to him.
How the heck did anybody even know to vote for this guy? But he did the blessing, and he did kind of a traditional blessing before a meal. And then everybody started to sit down or start eating or whatever. And then he kept going. And I think he was saying things about being tolerant and accepting and all these things that they're supposed to all embody. But he was saying the stuff out loud, and that's, I think, part of why he started to catch people's attention, and little by little he kept getting more votes. And one other thing I just want to mention real quick, earlier when I said there are some parallels to the current conclave that's about to happen, because there is actually a cardinal that was asked to resign by Pope Francis, and is actually now appealing that. He wants to be reinstated so that he can participate in the conclave.
Wow.
And there was very much a cardinal who there was a question about, wait, were you asked to resign? Aren't you not even supposed to be here? But it was on in the Pope's deathbed, and nobody, they couldn't confirm or deny.
Wow. How wild.
Exactly. Whoa. Art. Almost the exact same thing.
Life imitating art.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing that we hadn't really talked about yet was, there were several black cardinals that were there, and one in particular who was in the running and actually got the most votes in the first vote, I believe. And I remember watching that because, again, growing up Catholic, back in the 80s, and really by the mid 90s, I was out of it. I don't recall ever knowing of any black cardinals. And so I'm like, wait, are there actually black cardinals now? Or is this just, Hollywood trying to be more diverse?
Mm-hmm.
And I
Right.
went and looked it up, and there's actually 18 black cardinals that I believe all come from Africa. 18 that are eligible to vote in this conclave. So I don't even know if there's some that are older or for whatever reason not eligible, but I was like, wow, that's even progressive compared to what I recall growing up Catholic.
So the first black cardinal in the Catholic Church was from Tanzania, and he was appointed by Pope John.
Paul.
No, just Pope John the 23rd on March in March of 1960.
Oh, so there was one when I was back there. Just didn't see him.
In the United States. Now here's interesting. Here in the United States, the very first African American cardinal was November of 2020. Appointed by Pope Francis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
so,
not
yeah,
a lot of
there
black
weren't a lot of
priests.
black, yeah, not a lot of black cardinals.
Because you do have to work your way up. I mean, priest, well, even you could be a deacon, I guess. Priest. Deacons can actually be married. But once you get into like the full on committed to the church thing, there's priest, there's bishop, there's archbishop. There might even be some other kind of archbishop. And then there's cardinal, and then pope, obviously. So there's several layers of hierarchy. And I don't know if I can even say that I've ever seen a black priest in the U.S. There have to have been some, but
have to have for there to be a black cardinal.
Yeah.
But yeah, and not many.
Right.
And as we found out in the movie, racism is alive and well in the Catholic conclave, at least in the movie. And I would be hard pressed to say that that's inaccurate.
Yeah. And that was also something that was interesting about the new guy that came in. He wasn't black, but he was brown. He was, I don't know.
I believe he was introduced. Somebody said he's Mexican. He's from Kabul. He's stationed in Kabul, but he's Mexican. Yeah.
Yeah. And honestly, when I saw, they kind of had talked about him a little bit. And then when they actually showed him, I was like, wow, he actually looks like he could be Jesus.
Yeah, he did.
Because he looked at Middle Eastern, he had longer hair. And
and speaking of that, he was not winning, right? There were a lot of things that happened. I don't want to get into too much of everything that happened. We're already giving you enough spoilers. But there were a lot of different things that were happening. There were things being said about different cardinals, and there were cardinals stepping down and going, no, don't vote for me, vote for so-and-so. And it's really interesting that towards the end, this man stood up and just gave this incredible, passionate speech, very grounded.
Yeah.
And said all the things that I thought church was about. I thought that's what church was about. When I grew up, those are the things I was taught. Those aren't things I'm hearing out of church anymore. But it was powerful.
Yeah. And it was in response to someone else's little speech that was trying to go take the church back in time. It was going way more traditional, go back to so many of the old ways. And so in response to that, the guy was like, no. He just stood up. He's like, that's not what we're here for. Yeah.
And it was very, very, very powerful.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting. We were talking before the show about, how quickly things change. If you are planning on watching this show, you definitely don't want to watch right now, because we are definitely revealing some big things right now.
Yeah.
That this man who nobody knew, right? Nobody knew before the conclave politicizing, right? The campaigning. Thank you. That was happening. Nobody knew him. They didn't know who he was. They weren't even sure if he was really a cardinal. Then he got let into the conclave. He was proven he was cardinal. He was in the conclave, and his votes just slowly went up. And so after this last impassioned speech, they go in, and this man who didn't have more than, I don't know, I think 11 votes at one point, ends up winning. As much as we don't like giving those kinds of spoilers, it's really important to some of the things that we want to talk about. One, for me, it's a very incredible lesson on energy, right? Here's this man from the outside looking in. You think there's no way he could be the next pope. How are they going to possibly vote for him? They don't know him. That's not going to happen. And so
Right.
Traditional logical thinking is going to tell you he's not going to be pope. And yet one speech, one powerful speech that was from his heart, it was authentic, energetically powerful.
And it wasn't him trying to campaign for
No,
the
it
position.
wasn't.
That's not what it was about.
He was just speaking from his heart. He was speaking truth, and he was speaking about love and caring for each other and taking care of the flocks and being forgiving and loving, all the things that, we thought were the way, but it wasn't the energy of what people were feeling until he started speaking.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think there was one of the important lessons for me to take away from that is that your energy can transform your life like that. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And it doesn't have to follow the trajectory of what everybody is saying, because your energy can change everything.
Right. When you're standing in your power, when you're standing in your truth, your authentic, heart-driven truth, that's what, in that case, kind of moved mountains, so to speak.
Yeah. And I know you had a client that kind of applies through for this. You want to share?
Yeah. I had a client recently who was an older gentleman, a devout Catholic his entire life. He originally came in saying that he needed help with an addiction, let's just say, to a certain type of thing he might watch that he felt he wasn't supposed to be watching.
Right.
And I've had clients that have come in for that before. So I was like, sure, come on in. Let's work on it. But once he got there and we were talking, he revealed that it wasn't just the fact of watching it really that he was concerned about. Because of his lifelong study of Catholic religion and dogma, he had figured out that he was gay. Even though he'd had a wife, he'd had kids. So he went along with, what you're supposed to do and what is expected.
A lot of us did.
Yeah. But he, especially probably because he knows he's getting towards the end of his life. And so now he's getting concerned, is God going to accept me? I need to change, this desire, this urge that I have, so that I can be accepted.
The Catholic guilt.
Yeah. And I will tell you, when he was starting to kind of say that to me, I thought, please don't ask me to not make you gay, because I'm not going to do it. I will refuse ethically to attempt to do anything like that. And luckily he didn't. That wasn't what he was asking, really. He just wanted to not have those urges to look at those types of videos anymore. And so we did work on that. But I just felt so sorry for him. And knowing, like I said, I grew up Catholic, so I know what they teach. I know how they make the guilt thing such a predominant mode of, getting you to comply or do what they say is acceptable. And the threat of, if you don't, you go to hell, spend eternity in hell and all this stuff. I'm like, oh, this poor guy. And I couldn't really, because I knew this was lifelong dogma that he was, entrenched with. I couldn't at that point try to open his eyes to something that was more accepting. Well, God isn't really like that. Like, why is he going to, listen to me when he's had 50 million priests over the course of his life tell him otherwise? I mean, I was certainly open, and I was unjudging, kind of demonstrating what I hoped he would get out of it with how I was being with him. But boy, it just was a big kind of, here's how this is affecting people's lives, there's no reason for that. There's no reason for him to have felt so bad. And he had actually written, I mean, on the positive side, the fact that he had accepted it and it kind of acknowledged it to himself was
that he was gay.
Yeah. Was a plus to me. And he had actually written like an autobiography about himself, about what he went through, growing up, the different things that have happened, different times when he kind of had different realizations, having his kids, he had 2 sons. And he brought me a copy of his autobiography, asked if I wanted to keep it. I'm like, no, I don't need it. But he told me that he had actually shown it to some of the other people around where he lives. So I thought, in some ways, I'm really proud of him for not only realizing or recognizing in himself what was his truth, but also being willing to share it with others. Now, I don't know that he was sharing it with his priest, but sharing it with others that he recognized would be okay with it, would be open to it. So it's just, there's so much wrapped around the whole guilt thing of Catholicism that, it's
that is something that is something that you can help with correct me if I'm wrong, with either hypnotherapy sessions or as far as the guilt, working on that.
If people are wanting to get out of it, if they're wanting to break free from that, that is something that can help. That it was not exactly what he was asking for.
Right. But I'm saying, because I know for myself, I had like crippling anxiety. You couldn't see it from the outside. People thought I looked confident. But I had crippling anxiety, internal, people pleasing and imposter syndrome. I mean, you name a syndrome that has to do with a woman not thinking that she's all that in a bag of chips. I had it. and using the customized hypnotherapy I keep saying that, hypnotherapy recording that you did for me. I mean, it really made an incredible difference.
It can definitely shift that kind of mindset, and really, because it's so often it can be addressed to help address self-limiting beliefs, and that kind of guilt or dogma that gets pumped in by religion can definitely be a limiting belief about yourself. You may not have come up with it on your own because it came from the dogma or what you were taught in the church, but it's certainly settled in as, this is how I see myself because that's what I've been told is true about me, or what I can and can't do. So absolutely, that's something that, I mean, the recordings are just step one in that process of getting that changed. But that's the kind of thing that I'm working with clients on a pretty regular basis. Yeah,
that's awesome. And I know that you, excuse me, we found, oh my gosh, a couple of clips that we wanted to share with you. Was there anything else you wanted to share about?
Well, did we want to share the big surprise ending at the end?
Do we want to? Okay. You've had plenty of warnings. So
yes,
if you're still planning on watching it and you're still sticking around, we've warned you.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's go for it.
Yeah. Cause that was what I wanted. Like, I was going to explode if I didn't tell somebody. So as it turned out, it wasn't just because this guy, the new cardinal, was in Kabul that it was kept secret, but also because what's the right term? I'm not even sure exactly the right term. He was
there is a term for it. Yeah. And so he presents as masculine.
Right.
But still has a uterus.
Right.
And at one point he had gotten actually help from the Pope to go to Switzerland or Sweden, I cannot remember which one, to go and have the hysterectomy. And
he wasn't even aware that he had a uterus until I think he had his appendix removed or something, and
then found out he had a uterus.
Yeah, and the doctor was like, "You have a uterus in there," and so it wasn't something that had, changed his life in terms of before that, thinking he was not sure who he was or whatever. But the Pope had offered, he's like, okay, well, I'm going to pay for you to go get this medical procedure done. We'll do it up in, I can't remember if it was Switzerland. I think it was Switzerland, but I'm not sure. Because they're neutral.
Right. And I loved what he said, because in the end, he was like, he didn't go. And Lawrence was like, why? Why didn't you do it? And he was like, because this is how God made me.
Yeah. Zinger.
And who was I to do anything about that? I was like, oh, interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
it was
just thinking about it again.
Yeah. And I just sat there when everything was revealed. I was just sitting there like,
right.
They don't know who they just voted for.
Yeah.
And what a lovely man.
Yeah. Because what they voted for was who he is, not what organs he has.
Right.
And so it would be interesting if they would come out with sort of like a sequel to the movie at some point where he's been Pope for a while.
Yeah. And the repercussions from that. Yeah.
Yeah. Because now it's like, well, if he can rule with the uterus, then why can't a woman rule? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So we found, sorry, we didn't do anything. Jenny found two little clips that we want to share with you. One's really short and it's a funny, and the other one is more empowering. Which do you want to start with, Jenny?
We'll do the short and funny one first.
All right, so let's do the short and funny one. Okay. And this is Ahmed. It's Omid.
I think
Jalili.
Ahmed Jalili.
Jalili.
I'm guessing.
And it's a longer segment, but we just took this one little segment that had to do with Vatican City. Yeah. Hang on.
A woman can find a needle in a haystack. It's amazing. This is why there will never ever be a female pope. Do you understand this? Do you know why? Because the church lost the Holy Grail 500 years ago. The last thing they want is a female pope showing up at the Vatican, opening up a random cupboard going, there it is. There, the Holy Grail. It's been there the whole time. Oh my God.
So funny.
Yeah.
Oh, that cracked me up. Yeah, it was really good.
And I just happened to see that the other day on Facebook. I was like, holy crap.
I know. She sent it to me real quick. You take this 20-second clip and pull it out.
Oh,
absolutely. Man. So we're going to end. We're going to come back after this, but we're going to end on this last little segment. You got it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Susie, you are going to be so surprised when you see what the Bible says about transgender people. Do you know what a eunuch is? A eunuch was a man back in the day that was castrated. Now, of course, we don't have a name for women because the Bible really didn't talk about women. They were property. But let me read to you what Jesus says about the eunuchs. So in the book of Matthew, they describe 3 different types of eunuchs. Here we go. Matthew 19:12 says, "For there are eunuchs who were born that way, and there are eunuchs who have been made eunuchs by others, and there are eunuchs who choose to live like eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven. The one who can accept this should accept it." There were some that were born that way, and we should accept it. Now, I do have a degree in biblical studies from Liberty University, and I am reading from the New King James Version because I assume that's the only version you will take. So then in Isaiah 56:4-5, it says this, "For thus says the Lord, to the eunuchs who keep the Sabbath, and choose what pleases me, and hold fast my covenant. Even to them I will give in my house, and within my walls a place and a name better than that of sons and daughters. I will give them an everlasting name that shall not be cut off." He's given these non-binary people a better place in heaven than the sons and the daughters, the men and the women. Interesting. Then, of course, in Galatians chapter 3, verse 28, it says, there is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither slave nor free. There is neither male nor female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. God doesn't even recognize your gender. Also, did you know that God was non-binary? Because in Genesis chapter 1, verse 27, it says, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. So if we are made in God's image, then God must be both male and female, which could be gender fluid or non-binary, however you want to take it. I mean, Jesus walked around the earth with long hair and a dress. Anyway, John 13, verse 34. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another, as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this all will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another. Where's the love, Susie? It is only your love and acceptance of people that shows others that you are a Christian. So apparently you're not, but you think you are. So I urge you to go read those scriptures, look into them a little deeper, and understand that Jesus was an immigrant. He was a refugee. He was a marginalized person as well, who was a nomad that walked around the earth trying to help people like you love others and accept them and show people that just because somebody looks different and acts different and believes differently than you doesn't mean that they're a bad person.
Hallelujah.
Wow. That I just love that. And I love she brought actual scriptures.
Yeah.
And put them on the table. And it was just chef's kiss.
Absolutely.
Really
Exactly.
chef's kiss.
Yeah.
Let's see, where did I put here we go. So I think that is just about everything, right?
Yeah, I think so. We could mention since we talked earlier about those hypnotic recordings that I do, probably the quickest way to, if you're interested in something like that, would be to go to hypnohuddle.com, because there's a pretty easy way from there to you could either do a phone consult, which is free, or you could sign up for a custom hypnotic recording, and that can be done online. It doesn't even have to be done in person. There's an online form that I have that you can fill out, and then we would schedule a call, or we can go over things and clarify them. But that is certainly probably the quickest and easiest way to get started with that kind of work. And
it is a ridiculous price, folks. I'm trying to get her to raise her prices. So get in on them, because really is a ridiculous price for what you get. I definitely stand behind them because it's something that you can listen to. This is what I did, is I would take the hypnotherapy recordings that Jenny gave me, and I listened to them while I was sleeping. So it didn't even take my time, but it restructured and reformatted my brain. I call it brainwashing. Really, it's like brainwashing my brain.
Right.
But it made such a huge difference for me.
Yeah.
Just such a huge difference. So definitely a great thing to do. So I think that's it for this week. Do we have anything else?
I don't think so. I would just still encourage people, with everything that's going on in our political climate, to make sure you check out mobilize.us, because it has a really good comprehensive list of things like protests, or I think it may even include like the blackouts, like economic blackout type of information. I'm not positive, but I thought I saw something like that on there too. And if you haven't signed up for General Strike yet, do that so that we can get up to the appropriate number and actually get that set up. But there were, I did not get a chance to go participate in the May 1 protests that were yesterday, but I've heard and seen that there were over 1,000 different cities that had protests that were kind of officially planned or set up. So it's a good thing. It's going to keep going. Just keep paying attention to when those are happening and when there's one near you, so that you can keep making your voice heard.
Yeah. Awesome. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, follow, share. I got a topic or question, want to be a guest? Make sure you go to our website at unleashedafpodcast.com. Go to www.jdd on the website. We'd love to hear from you. We have a little form there. And until next week. Oh, wait, we know what we're talking about next week. We do. We know. Surprise, surprise. So next week we're talking about, let's see, and do I have it in front of me? No. It's about shame.
Shame being the original leash, basically.
The original leash, yeah, that shame being the original leaf. So leash, the original leash. So I'm really looking forward to that. Should be a great time and be incredibly helpful. So hopefully you'll turn it on. Tune in next week. We'd love to hear from you, and get unleashed AF. Take care.
I'm done trying to live up to others' expectations. Family, society, class, race, sex, or religions. It's time to break free from the isms that make us feel